Hello and welcome to another edition of Birth of a New Dimension. My name is Aurora. I am a walk-in, I'm a galactic walk-in, meaning that I am not the original inhabitant of this physical human earthly form. I came into this body on October 8th of 2001 through the interdimensional portal that I created and have named the Flying Rainbow Lasagne. Lasagne, because of the curly edge of the lasagna shape being similar to the curly edge of a lasagna noodle, and the flying and rainbow aspects being self-explanatory. The Flying Rainbow Lasagne is a bridge between worlds. I created that bridge, and I am currently the physical and energetic embodiment of that bridge. This means that I bring energy from higher dimensional, less dense realms into this denser realm, and I also transmit energy and experiences back from this level of density to higher dimensions. And all of this happens in real time, as opposed to what often happens with people during their lifespan who are cut off from source and from higher dimensional consciousness, where lifetime experiences are accumulated and then given back to the source of consciousness. So this is a big difference. Working in real time allows the source of higher intelligence and consciousness to make changes and shifts in the structure and experiences and context of your earthly third dimensional mundane experience. It's like being able to transmit back to your home base what you are experiencing. And home base is not a cold, distant, impersonal, unloving abstraction. Home base is more like a deeply involved, caring, loving parent. And you are an offshoot of that parental hyperspace consciousness who cares very deeply for you and cares very much about the quality of your experience. I bring this up because right now, on Earth surface culture, and for about the past 10 or 12,000 years, earthly experience has been very unpleasant. It has been filled with disease, discomfort, unintentional and early death, and lack of sovereignty. I could categorize it as mental slavery, but I would say simply that humanity as it currently stands is not free, is not sovereign to make their own choices. And this has to do with being informed and being empowered. So we can think about, like, let's use as an example Lady Diana, who married into the royal family, and she was a figurehead who was not empowered. Even though she had a high station, she couldn't actually do what she wanted. In a lot of ways, she was very limited and lived in a cage. So humanity is similar. Humanity has a birthright, or a treasure, or a trust fund that you should have access to, but you have been denied access to it. And this jewel is your non-physical energy presence. I'd like to get a little bit into Tibetan Buddhism as the keepers of a lineage and tradition of consciousness cultivation that comes to us from ancient Atlantis. So several cultures were the people who kept alive these seeds of awareness. The Maya of South America were part of them, and the Tibetan Buddhists of the Far East kept alive many of the esoteric practices of energy cultivation that abrogate the necessity of death. So I came through a energetic portal and did not die. And I often describe the Flying Rainbow Lasagne as the topological solution to the question of how to die without dying. Topology is the study of surfaces, and the flying rainbow lasagna is a morphing or twisting or warping or distorting of the surface area of the bubble of consciousness that is created by space, time, and awareness. So science recognizes space-time, but it does not yet recognize awareness. Space-time is like the analog record, and your awareness is like the needle on the record that actually makes the experience of third-dimensional reality, quote-unquote, play. Brief pause while I pause my recording. The Tibetan Buddhists have a tradition called the Vajrayana. This is Vajrayana. Vajra is diamond, and this is the practice of cultivating one's diamond body. This is what I do in an informal way. So it's like saying the Vajrayana technique is like going to the musical conservatory, learning the formal musical scales, and practicing what others have done before you. I simply have developed the intuitive understanding of quote-unquote music and how to play it without ever quote-unquote studying at the conservatory, and have developed my diamond body according to my own techniques. So this now gets into planetary ascension, and ascension as individual masters have experienced it over the ages. So, over the past 10 or 12,000 years, humans have certainly ascended. What does ascension mean, Aurora? Please let me rewind and redefine terms. When we do math, we do a lot with simply defining terms. So when we define death, we say that this is the end of corporeal life, the end of corporeal existence. The physical existence no longer is here, but awareness continues. There is certainly afterlife or awareness after you drop the physical form. There's another option out there. It's not just an ice cream store with one flavor. You also have the option of ascension. This is when instead of leaving behind the physical aspect of your totality, you transform the physical aspect of your totality, and it can come with you into higher dimensional, less dense realms. I've said this before. If I am repetitive, it is because humans and many people learn through repetition. In previous eras, people have been able to cultivate their Vajrayana or diamond body, diamond meaning indestructible body, kind of like Olympic athletes, rare individuals who exemplified the potential of what a human being could be cultivated into. So this is saying that the Tibetan Buddhist formal system of study exists in order to help individuals cultivate their consciousness. And this has helped people on an individual level to make the soul migration. I call this soul migration because it is very similar to what happens when either like Canada geese or monarch butterflies perform their annual migration, except in biological entities, it is a migration across vast physical distances, across a continent. Monarch butterflies migrate from Mexico, central Mexico, across the entire United States plains and make it as far north as Canada, and then have their experience of reproduction and turn around in the next generation and migrate back to Mexico. Same thing with sea turtles. I talk about this a lot. The little baby sea turtles that you are analogous to in consciousness breaking out of your egg, and little baby sea turtles just trying to get out of their egg and make it to the ocean and not be eaten by a seagull, so that they have the opportunity to make their migration. Sea turtles swim enormous distances throughout the Pacific in order to reach their places where they feed and reproduce, and then of course return back to the beaches that they originate from to lay their eggs. You as consciousness are on a trajectory. You have a soul migration, a place that you originate from and that you are returning to. Just like any of these beautiful animals that originate, I hatched on this beach and went on this enormous 5,000-mile journey through the Pacific Ocean and then came back full circuit and made my own babies on the beach. This is what we are experiencing as consciousness. You have been emanated from the source. The source could be called the singularity or the totality or unity consciousness, the presence of everything, the address of the house where everything exists, the totality of everything. That's where you come from. And the totality has expanded, and or you as consciousness have expanded, and you now have a different viewpoint where you don't live at infinity. You live within the limitations of the physical realm. And you are here having these experiences, and eventually you will return to unity consciousness, or to the totality, or to the source, the beach where you hatched, okay? And in order to make the next leg of your soul migration, you must cultivate your muscles. Canada geese don't just wake up one day as a little tiny fledgling with little tiny feathers and decide to fly 3,000 miles. No. Or let's think of Arctic snow geese that fly, 10,000 miles to get to where they need to go. It is through concerted effort and daily training that animals are cultivated and have the capacity to make these enormous athletic achievements. Now let us talk about the enormous athletic achievements of consciousness that some beings have made. We would call them masters because these would be athletes of the mind. Those who have mastered their mind and cultivated the muscles of their non-physical body to the point where they can fly, they can leave this level of dense consciousness. So first of all, if you're a tiny baby sea turtle and you get into the ocean, one of the first things you find out is that there are enormous ocean currents. You're a tiny, tiny little thing, and there are huge currents of energy out there. So too is this true with consciousness. If you die or when you ascend, the first thing you will notice is that you are being subjected to enormously powerful currents of energy. And this is the flow of energy in the universe and the flow of awareness. Brief pause. So another culture that understood the need to cultivate one's consciousness before death in order to properly make the soul migration was that of ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt and the funerary tradition and the rituals that are associated in terms of mummification and the spells, the verbal information that was placed over a corpse, and also the intention of cultivating yourself during your life so that when you drop the physical body, you will be able to successfully navigate the afterlife and make the soul journey or the soul migration. So let me go back to this distinction. The Olympic athletes of the mind who have ascended have not died. We're going to get into some really interesting stuff here. Some articles have been coming up about remains of monks that have been meditating for the past 200 years have been unearthed. This goes back to what is called the rainbow body. So in this Vajrayana tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, Vajra meaning diamond body, there is another level of attainment that is called achieving the rainbow body. And the meditators, the masters who learned how to do this, taught that to the next generation of initiates. So it's like saying, think of a master painter like Da Vinci. and he painted the Mona Lisa, developed all of these techniques of how to use oil paint, and then he taught his students and other painters after him how to paint like him. This is what these masterful meditators of the Far East have done over many generations. They have learned techniques for cultivating consciousness that are very effective and that lead to what would be classed as a type of immortality. So the rainbow body means that the meditator has been transformed and their physical form is not what it originally was. There are many different anecdotal stories of beings from the Far East who meditated until they achieved this rainbow body. For some, I read a book about this at the KTD monastery on Overlook Mountain, where I used to live in Woodstock, where I was visiting for an event and went to the bookstore, and a book jumped off the shelf and said, "Read me," and I did, and the book was about cultivating one's rainbow body. It certainly seemed to be relevant to my own life journey. And in that book, there were wonderful stories that were shared. So a lot of the stories about monks who achieved their rainbow body are from hundreds of years ago, right? So it's easier to say, these are tall tales that were passed down. However, there are several stories that come from the early and mid 20th century. So these are stories that were either recorded by the original eyewitness or only one level of separation away from the original eyewitness. One of these stories is of a wandering nun, this is in the early 1900s, who asked to stay in an unused barn on a person's property. And this was a normal thing to do in the society of the Far East. Wandering meditators, wandering mendicants, and spiritual people, that was a considered acceptable aspect of life for some people, to renounce mundane activities and live as a renunciate was a part of that culture, and it was considered acceptable. One of these renunciates, and so they would sometimes say, "Can I stay in your empty room for a few days? Can I live in your field for a few days?" And usually the villagers or townspeople would support the wandering holy person through contributions of food or whatever they might need. So this story goes that this wandering nun needed a place to stay. She asked a farmer to stay in his barn for a week, and she asked that she not be disturbed. And during the middle of the week, the farmer went to bring her some food. When he opened the door, he said that he saw that her limbs, like arms and legs, were separated from her torso, and that the bone sockets were emitting rainbow light. And he, of course, was very shocked, and he closed the door of the barn and backed away slowly and, realized that he wasn't supposed to be seeing that. And at the end of the week, returned and found nothing but the nun's clothing and hair and fingernails remained. So this is one level of transformation. We would call it almost totality. You no longer have anything left behind, or there's a minimal residue left behind. There in the book were described other levels of transcendence. Some monks choose to leave behind their physical remains as holy relics. So there's a reason for all of this. You know something? If a person is able to just poof out of existence, like into a puff of smoke or vapor, and you literally leave nothing behind, not even your shadow, there's no evidence. It is certainly the most magical transformation, and also there's no evidence, there's nothing to show about it. Seeing the the transformed person's hair or fingernails left behind, that is eye-opening. So there are stories of other monks who achieved their rainbow body, but who left behind relics, either in the form of their entire corpse, which then did not decompose, or that their corpse exhibited special qualities. So this is from hundreds of years ago. Some of these monks who achieved their rainbow body, their relics, like one is a skull, and they found that, pilgrims would chip away a piece of the skull, like to steal a little something and take it home with them, and they found that the skull repaired itself. The reason why these relics are left behind are as clues or encouragement beyond rational skepticism of what you can achieve through self-cultivation. These beings very wisely understood that leaving behind a magic relic can help to convince other people in subsequent generations of the possibility of doing something that would be considered magical, supernatural, quote-unquote, impossible, or beyond what could be expected according to the rules of the physical realm. Now let's flash forward to some of these news reports that have been coming out lately. So this is from the Far East in China, where apparently someone was trying to sell a corpse that was 200 years old of a mummified monk who is still sitting in the lotus position, whose corpse appears to be uncorrupted or not decomposed, although it does appear to be desiccated or dried out. And authorities found out about it. The sale never happened. It was going to be sold on the black market of antiquities. And instead, information came to light that this is a being who was a disciple of a very well-known meditator, and that it is said that this person has achieved their rainbow body because they have cultivated their awareness to the point where they are, let's say, beyond death. So in my artwork, I draw all the time these shapes that I call time vortexes that I have in if you go to the UCY homepage for Birth of a New Dimension and look to the left, you will see a feed from the Birth of a New Dimension Facebook page filled with links to pictures and sketches and artwork. And you will find a link to Time Vortex. This is a drawing that I draw all the time, which is kind of like, if you can imagine, a cross-section of a circus tent that has a tent pole that goes out the top of the tent and goes to infinity, and all the rest of the lines that are drawn upward meet the tent itself. And the tent is a flowing membrane. It's a flowing membrane of death. It is a flowing membrane of energy beyond which your awareness cannot penetrate. And I've spoken about on these broadcasts before how you as an individual within your life are experiencing many possibilities. You are literally energizing every single possibility and every single iteration of what you can experience. So that means every single way you could have died, you died in this realm. If you drowned when you were 3 years old because you fell into the family pool, you drowned when you were 3 years old, and then you had to circulate back to the beginning and start again. And through this endless series of iterations, we refine our consciousness until we eventually align our awareness with, quote-unquote, the central tent pole, or what I call the path of least likelihood. This is the path of ascended mastery. It is an infinite timeline. When you embody this timeline, you do not die a physical death. You transcend the limitations of the physical reality within which you find yourself. You maintain continuity of consciousness, and you bring your physicality with you, but in a transformed state. So, these beings who achieved their rainbow body and left behind either stories or relics or fingernails or the capacity to teach others how to do it, these beings are like individual Olympic athletes of consciousness who cultivated themselves as individuals. They weren't necessarily working as a collective or as a team. And that is because for about the past 10 or 12,000 years, most people have died corporeal deaths. Very, very few, percentage-wise, have ascended. And now what we are experiencing on the planet is an opportunity for mass ascension. Many, many people all doing this at once. This is incredibly powerful. It's like saying no longer are you just one little goose flying from Canada to Mexico or wherever you need to go. You are now a flock of geese, and you're flying in formation. And when geese fly in formation, although each one has to be strong enough, of course, to flap its own wings and carry its own body weight, geese help each other in breaking the wind or creating less turbulence for the geese that are behind them, and they take turns. So the ones that are forging ahead at the front of the V get to fly at the back of the V. Eventually, it's a little bit easier to fly at the back because everyone else has, created the way for you. This is what is happening right now on Earth with not only human consciousness, the entire biosphere, all consciousness on Earth, and the planet herself. This is pretty big. Earth herself is achieving her rainbow body. This is a transformation of consciousness and a change of Earth's physical existence. Just like the monk who transcended did not leave behind a physical body. The physical structure of your body was changed. What I've said before is that your physical matter is light that has the privilege of going slower than the speed of light. We are all made of light, and your physical form is moving slower than the speed of light. Achieving your rainbow body is equivalent of returning your body, physical matter, to the speed of light so that it has a new state of being, different states of being like solid, liquid, gas, or plasma. Let's talk about these different states of being. I know this is very science-based. However, this relates to consciousness. That just like there are different densities of matter, there are different densities of energy or consciousness. And right now you are submerged in the level of the third dimension and the density of this realm, but you have other less dense aspects of self. And so your physical body is like the anchor in the physical realm, but when ordinary death occurs, you cut the chain to that anchor. The anchor stays in the physical realm, and your consciousness is able to travel onward where it needs to go. The difference about what we are doing now is you can literally transform the anchor. What if you took the anchor, an anchor is made of like iron or steel, and what if you put it in a cauldron and added tons of heat energy to it? You could at a certain point vaporize it and turn it from a solid into a liquid and then eventually into a gas. This is a change of state. All right? Let's talk about plasma. Plasma is a state of matter. It is one of the highest energy states of matter. Plasma is intelligent or can be intelligent and self-aware. Plasma can be a container for consciousness, just like physical matter can be a container for consciousness. The surface of the sun is covered in plasma. Stars are made of plasma. Plasma exists in the mantle of Earth and other planets. Plasma is, according to science, superheated gas that has a lot of negative ions as well as regular particles that have a balance of electrons. Ordinarily, the negative ions would fly off in every direction, but because the plasma is superheated or super energized, it actually stays together and is coherent. Okay, I'm trying to get you to understand that there are consciousnesses that exist at a higher dimensional, less dense state. These are plasma beings. That's right. The sun is a plasma being and is inhabited by beings that are made of pure plasma and light and consciousness. I think I've spoken about the concept of having a sun bath, literally connecting your consciousness through the portal of the sun or some other stellar portal. And this washes away all aspects of self that are not eternal, that are not part of the ascended consciousness, that are only perturbations that result as a direct experience from being submerged in time. This is literally what your temporal ego is. Time, temporal, is your temporal ego is literally the sense of self that is derived by being submerged in time. When you take a sun bath, you connect directly to solar consciousness. You wash away all of those non-permanent aspects of self that are only arising from being submerged in time. Now, this broadcast is called Birth of a New Dimension, and I speak about it as preparing the way for humans to, human Earth surface culture, to connect with a multidimensional culture. I'd like to talk about the way that experts do star travel, because experts do not have to create a clank-clank metal spaceship of externalized artificial technology in order to traverse the vast reaches of space and come and visit you. Okay, I am preparing you here for who do you wish to interact with. There's such a spectrum of divergent star cultures. And the reason for this is that there's a primary ray of consciousness that is beyond any description of race or species. It is simply consciousness. Just like there's white light that comes from the sun. When white light goes through a prism or a crystal, it is split into its constituent elements. It is refracted. It turns into all of the colors of the rainbow. The higher dimensional consciousness, pure consciousness that is undifferentiated, unity consciousness, is split into various sub-entities. And these sub-entities can be enormous. They can exist on the level of galaxies. Their time scale or lifespan can be one of billions of years. And within those galaxies, there are so many stars, billions and billions of stars. You know, we're quoting Carl Sagan here. Each galaxy, each galactic being has a set of divergent personality characteristics. And these star cultures within that galaxy can represent different personality characteristics. So, for example, let's talk about the Pleiades. A lot of people that I know feel a deep connection with the Pleiades, and these are what we would call very beautiful, benevolent extraterrestrials. The Pleiades is a cluster of stars, so it's like saying, you're from North America, or it's like saying you're from, the United States. It's a huge geographical region. The culture that exists there is very benevolent, very unconditionally loving, and the world that they have is beautiful. It's just trying to give it a characterization here. It's like living in Hawaii. Imagine living on a tropical island where the water is the same temperature as the air. There's beautiful fruits to eat. There's no bugs. There's no poisonous animals. There's just all day long celebration, joy, comfort, musical expression, love-making, peace. The culture is very peaceful and beautiful, and they can live that way because their context has fostered those characteristics. If you grow up in this beautiful, world of abundance with no turmoil, You won't necessarily have to access or develop personality characteristics that are more about the fight for survival. Now let's contrast this with a different type of star culture that might come from a place where there's very few resources, where really the only way to survive is to kill or be killed, where really you have to always be thinking about how to get ahead, how to fight against others, how to protect yourself from poisonous and toxic environments and other animals that would like to kill or eat you. That develops a different set of personality characteristics. If we took one of these beautiful, artistic, enjoyable, pleasurable, Pleiadian people and put them on a planet where it's just totally a free-for-all and it's kill or be killed and, no quarter asked and no quarter given, clearly the person from the Pleiades would be outclassed. They wouldn't be in the right context for them. And likewise, if you took one of these, barbarians from a very violent culture and you brought them to the Pleiades and you had them try to integrate there, they wouldn't be able to, because they don't understand, in order to have quote unquote, a good life in the Pleiades, you have to be able to be an artist. You have to be able to be a poet and sing a song and dress beautifully and have good manners and be graceful. And a barbarian who's used to just killing people to get what they want could never function effectively in a culture that requires grace and compassion. I bring this up in order to give you examples of cultivating various personality characteristics within a galaxy, okay? Now we understand that various star cultures have various personality characteristics, just like on Earth. We could say, oh, the German national personality is like this, or the Australian national personality is like this, and that, these are cultural isms that arise contextually. This is relevant to you and what will happen when you interact with beings from hyperspace realms, because I recommend against interacting with beings that have to use a clank metal spaceship. And there's a reason why those beings use externalized artificial technology as opposed to internalized spiritual and technology that is based on pure consciousness and energy. True experts do star travel by utilizing the sun or stars as portals for consciousness. When you enter into one of these portals of consciousness, you are having a sun bath. Literally, all of the non-eternal aspects of self are cleansed away. It means that your chakras or energy centers match perfectly with the patterns of energy as it is flowing in the universe. Your internal song or tone or energy pattern matches perfectly with the harmonic vibration of the star that you are moving through. And it's also like saying you're not carrying any baggage. You can't take anything that is not eternal with you. Anger, grief, sadness, disappointment, the denser emotions, these are not eternal emotions. If you've ever had the experience of having someone that you love die, whatever, your dear grandmother or grandfather, when they were alive, they might have driven you crazy, whatever grandma does to drive you crazy. But then when she dies, everyone at the funeral only remembers the good things. She gave you cookies, she patted you on the head, she was very nice and kind to you, she never said anything critical or, did anything that made you unhappy or upset. That's because, literally, those unhappy, upset feelings are only tied to the experience of being submerged in time. When you exit the time plane, you are in another realm, where really the only emanation is unconditional love. So, of these divergent star cultures, not all of them have cultivated themselves to the point of unconditional love, so that they can go through a stellar portal and maintain continuity of consciousness. Going through a stellar portal and maintaining continuity of consciousness is analogous to what the Tibetan Buddhist monks have learned to do. They cultivate their consciousness during life so that when they go through the portal of death, they don't have to forget everything that they've learned. They don't have to let go of everything that they are. They only have to let go of the things that are not eternal. They take the rest with them. This is how we can understand, for example, the Karmapa. He is the 17th incarnation of a particular entity of consciousness, and this entity has continuity of consciousness. Although the Karmapa might be in his 20s, in his current corporeal existence, his consciousness has continuity that goes back over 17 lifetimes. That is amazing, because mostly in this time and place, people do not have continuity of consciousness. Just like most people are not lucid dreamers. Most people go to sleep, close their eyes, and have unconsciousness, then wake up in the morning and have consciousness. Most people die and enter a time of unconsciousness, and then live again and are conscious, and they don't remember who they were. It's like, how can you not remember who you were before you put on your pajamas and went to bed and fell asleep? But some people do not. So this has to do with cultivation of consciousness. Cultivate your consciousness on an individual level in order to have continuity of consciousness from lifetime to lifetime. And now we're also talking about being able to maintain continuity of consciousness from dimension to dimension. These are what true starfarers do. This is what we will do when we ascend. We will no longer have to be tied to a planet in order to have plants catch sunlight for us and turn it into food. And this is one of the major limitations and why you need a planet right now. For example, right now I am sun gazing. Beautiful sunlight is coming in through my window, and I am ingesting it through my third eye. I've spoken about this on the radio, but have not given specific instructions on how to do so. I teach it in my class, Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. This is called sun gazing, and you have to do it properly because it's very much like training for a marathon. You know, you don't just get up in the morning and run 26 miles with no training. That will hurt your feet and ankles and knees, and then you'll have damage. So you don't just begin sun gazing with no training. You have to work up to it. You have to cultivate the apparatus, which is your third eye, to do it, just like you have to cultivate your body and your legs and your skeletal muscles in order to run properly. And then, just like being a runner, you have to do it every day or every other day. So you have to practice sun gazing in order to be able to do it all the time. And eventually, what one may do is abrogate the necessity of ingesting solid food. Because we are solid light. We are light that is going slower than the speed of light. We currently have an intermediary called chlorophyll that catches sunlight in plant matter, turns it into starches and sugars that humans can eat. All right? This is why humanity is stuck on the surface of Earth right now. Why can humans not leave the planet? Because you still need plants in order to translate light into food. Ascension has everything to do with raising your vibration and developing the non-physical energetic anatomy to ingest nothing but pure sunlight, because that is what we will eat on our soul migration. We will leave the planet just like the little baby sea turtles hatch from the beach that they were deposited upon. Humanity was incepted on Earth a long time ago, and we have been gestating here. And then soon it is time for the egg to open up and for the little baby sea turtles to emerge from the egg. So individual monks who have meditated and achieved their rainbow body, these are like little baby sea turtles that hatched on their own schedule and managed to get off of the surface of Earth. They managed to get into the hyperspace realm. It's also these beings acting, on an individual basis have really been noble groundbreakers or like people who go through the woods and blaze a trail for others. Very, very difficult work to do it on your own. Now, because of where we are in the trajectory of consciousness that is the planet, we are all working together. And that is why I am here. I am here as part of a collective. And we will all be making this migration together. And it is a beautiful thing. So first of all, the planet herself is going to be making this migration. Can you believe it? I think I've explained before how stars have a lifespan. And this planet is an emanation from our nearest local star, Sol. That's why everything is solar, because his name is Sol. And Earth is like one of Sol's daughters. And Earth has a lifespan. But let's also talk about what happens upon death. Science has programmed you, and objective materialism has programmed you to believe that death is the end. Ancient Egyptians knew that death was not the end. Tibetan Buddhists know that death is not the end. The Karmapa knows that death is not the end. He's the 17th in a lineage of beings, and that will keep on going and going and going. I know that death is not the end because I died, but I did not die. The experience of creating the flying rainbow lasagna was a death experience. I went through the portal of death. Literally, the ego that used to be in this body was unmade. It was washed away. Consciousness remained, and a new ego has developed. So this is what must be understood. True starfarers go from star system to star system as traveling collectives of consciousness. And when you enter and exit the solar or stellar portal, all that you can bring with you is love. No baggage, nothing that is less than love. Now let's contrast that with some of these starfaring cultures who use clank-clank metal spaceships or artificial technology to transport their consciousness across vast distances. These are beings, if they got into the sun, they would wash away their totality. They would wash away what they are because they identify with their ego. They identify with what is temporary. They identify with their lower vibrational, temporary aspects of self. These are the beings that would like to control and manipulate others. When you're at the level of unconditional love, you have zero desire to control and manipulate others. This is one great little litmus test you can do on yourself or on others. If you say, is this loving? Here's the litmus test. Am I attempting to change or control or manipulate someone or something else or the situation? If the answer is yes, it is not loving. Love is total acceptance. No loving being would say, I see a planet down there. I think I want to enslave everyone, tell them all what to do, and make them give me all of their resources. That is the antithesis of love. A loving approach would be to say, I see a planet down there. I am going to observe and look at that planet and watch what people do because they are all perfect in what they need to be doing. I don't need to do or change or fix anything. That's really the feeling of unconditional love. When you get to that tone, you do not have to change or fix reality. You are accepting reality. But ironically enough, achieving that level of acceptance has a transformative effect. Love is the universal solvent. I know people say water is the universal solvent. No, no, no. Love is the universal solvent. It is literally a tone, like here's an A. An A is a tone, and when you are loving, you are literally creating a harmonic tone with your heart chakra. And the tone is created by having an equal amount of energy coming in and an equal amount of energy going out. It is equality, it is balance, it is stasis. And that is why love is the currency of the universe. It doesn't matter what vibratory rate you are traveling at. Love is the rate that you translate into to talk to other people. So let's say you're traveling at 1,000,000 miles an hour and you want to share energy and interact with someone who's only traveling at 1 mile an hour. You, going 1,000,000 miles an hour, have to slow yourself down a little bit to get to be loving. And the person who is only going 1 mile an hour has to get faster and increase their vibration to be loving. This process is what is being experienced on Earth right now, where beings who have been cut off from higher source and are not moving at a very fast vibratory rate are having to raise their vibration. Ascension, climbing up in your vibration. And at the same time, there are beings that are in a higher vibrational realm, and they're having to slow themselves down and become more solid, more matter, more material. We are coming together with another dimension. We are going to become less dense. They are going to become more dense. And eventually, this will be a marriage of consciousness. Birth of a new dimension means that lower vibrational and higher vibrational consciousness will meld together in a seamless continuum, and we will have a whole new experience. That is really the intention for this whole experience. We were never meant to be artificially separated either from higher self and lower self, or less dense realms and more dense realms. We were always meant to have this amazing continuity of consciousness. Energy that can go all the way from the top of the ladder, source consciousness, all the way down into the denser realms, and then that energy can reclimb the ladder and go back to the source and the less dense realms. When I speak about ascension, that is you as an individual and Earth consciousness as a planet climbing back up the ladder and raising her vibration to get back to or return to those higher levels of consciousness. So death is the aberration. It's the opposite of the way everyone knows it. Everyone thinks death is unavoidable. Death is universal, except for maybe a few people here and there, like Lao Tzu is said to have ascended. Enoch and Ezekiel in the Bible are said to have ascended. Jesus or Yeshua of Judea is said to have ascended. These people who were written about and described in the Rainbow Body, the book about the Rainbow Body, have ascended. So that's like a tiny little sprinkling here and there of people who ascended, but mostly everybody died. I am here to tell you that death is the aberration and ascension is the totality. Ascension is what you were meant to experience, and there is a 100% likelihood of you achieving ascension. The only question is, how much time and effort will it take? How many iterations or possible combinations of actions and ideas and events will you have to live through, just like on Groundhog's Day in the movies, in order to reach your ascension timeline? This is the process of refinement, the refinery of consciousness. Your awareness is being refined to the point where you will no longer have to die. Every single living being on Earth right now is being refined to the point where they will no longer ever have to die. We are transcending the necessity of death on Earth. Death was never meant to be here. Death is the aberration, and continuity of consciousness or ascension is inevitable. It is the inevitable program. In fact, I call myself an inevitability particle. It means I know that I will be at the ascension. I am already there. And the only question is the exact events, the exact integument that will carry me from this moment now to the moment of planetary ascension. And ascension is not the end, any more than when you are pregnant and you give birth. That is not the end. It is the end of pregnancy, but is the beginning of parenthood. So when ascension happens, we will leave the surface of the planet. We will no longer be tied to plants and chlorophyll and use them as intermediaries for food. We will ingest light directly. That's not the end. That is the beginning. You will look back on this time, being in the physical form, as a time of such limitations. Just like if you could remember back to being in the womb, you would remember how limited it felt, how you couldn't really stretch out your body. It was very cramped. You couldn't really get all of the resources that you wanted. They say that babies are born because they're hungry. There's a limit to the amount of nourishment that the placenta can deliver, and eventually the body's needs overwhelm the resources. This is literally what is happening. Cannot only eat physical food, you have to eat light. You need to get out of the physical realm to eat pure light. You need to be birthed into a higher dimension. And when that happens, you then get to explore the senses of having a new body. What are the rules of the new realm? Who exists there with you? This will be a wonderful thing. And because we are doing a consciousness migration en masse, many of us at once, it's quite wonderful because you know that you will be with a group. You will be with many others. And the experience of traveling as a collective of consciousness is like the best, most creative, fun, endless, eternal party you could ever imagine. A party, like imagine a Cirque du Soleil crossed with Burning Man, sprinkled with a dose of, let's say, having a salon with Terence McKenna and painting with Salvador Dali and playing music with Jimi Hendrix, and then throw in some ascended masters and then travel across the universe. It's endless creativity, lovemaking, sharing of energy, and joy. You will be leaving the womb and entering a expanded world of wonderful possibilities. So let's end on that note of wonderful expanded possibilities. Please check out Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, and don't forget to tune in next week. Thank you so much.